grow hard about what you want to be. Step 4. Everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.
Welcome to Tales from the Field. We are back and better than ever. Thank you for joining us. Last week, we had Daniel Tiller, and he released Azure Data Studio and the ADS migration extension, a powerful combo for online SQL migrations, part 1. Then Tuesday, we had our Azure Data Community Roundtable. On Wednesday, we released a first look into statistics for database performance in Microsoft Fabric Data Warehouse. And then this Monday, Daniel Taylor was back again with Azure Data Studio and ADS migration, a powerful combo for online migrations, part 2 this time. Just an hour ago, we had our first August update, our first of our monthly updates on Microsoft Fabric with the Bradley Schapp from the the Fabric Cat team in the flesh. It wouldn't be us if I didn't screw up the intro. There we go. All right. So much to see, so much to do. You don't want to miss a thing. So if this is your
and
first
where
time
can you
by
find
Daniel,
that, Brad? Where can you find all that great content?
Well, all that great content, Josh. That's a great segue. Josh has a great segue. There we go. Somebody make a banner for Mr. Ludeman.
See, Brad is not the only one smooth with the transitions. I just jump right in there and slide right down.
I love it. I love it. Well, speaking of sliding, let's make sure that you slide over to the YouTube page, which is the home of Tales from the Field, aka.ms/TFTF YouTube, or you can also go to YouTube/@Tales from the Field. Over on Twitter, follow our Twitter account, which also has a link to our YouTube page at TalesTF the Field. If you make a comment on the YouTube stream, one of my amazing colleagues will see that, and they will add it to the stream. Talk to me, Goose. Andreas Padilla just went vertical on us, but it looks like he's back. All right. So speaking of my amazing co-host, I am joined by Daniel Taylor, Andreas Padilla, Mr. Joshludeman, and he is a fountain of connectivity and happiness. It is your friend and mine, Neeraj Jhaveri. A quick call to action here. You know, it would probably actually help if I had shared my screen. There it is. And let me just find the right thing for us to look at. Boom! The magic of the internet is real. Go over to the Azure Data Community. Microsoft has launched this. They have benefits for user groups. If you're a user group, sign up there. If you're looking for a user group, you want to go over there and find a user group near you. There are hundreds of them all around the world, meeting monthly, like-minded people who deal with data issues, being able to, bond with one another, sometimes share a meal, and also network, which is massively important. Go and join that Azure Data Community. I know it was instrumental in my career and also several of our folks who are on the show right now. But wait, there's more. You also want to head over to SQLSaturday.com. SQL Saturday has some of the best free live training in the world. That's right, you heard it, free. As a matter of fact, coming up on the 7th of October, we have SQL Saturday, Orlando, Florida. You don't want to miss this, because who's going to be there? Well, I'm going to be there. Joshludeman's going to be there. Dan Taylor's going to be there. Buck Woody's going to be there. We have a pre-con, the Microsoft Fabric, for the data engineer and for the DBA to be able to help you understand how Fabric can work for you and your workloads. Not to mention, there is so much wonderful content. Our colleague Karthik Yella is coming over as well. We've got a lot of great presentations on Saturday. You want to make sure and check those out. But you also want to make sure that after you head over to SQLSaturday.com, you head over to DataSaturday.com. Data Saturday has a list of virtual events around the globe with Microsoft folks, MVPs, some of the top consultants and people in the field out there working today. You want to go check those out because it is a wonderful opportunity for you to get free online training if you can't make it there in person.
And Brad, if I could mention Orlando, seats are limited for the free event. So sign up early because I fully expect this year to be a full event.
Absolutely. And it will go on a wait list. Dan, that's a great point. So you want to make sure you get in early. And speaking of getting in, it's too late to get in early, but you can still get in. We have our Microsoft Fabric Learning Group over on LinkedIn that we have created. We are near 1,000 people in the group already. Constant new content is posted. You see some great stuff by Will Needham there. You might see him again a little bit later in the show. But there is a ton of wonderful activity happening in here constantly. And if you're looking to learn about Microsoft Fabric, this is a wonderful place for you to go. All right. So that was a lot, Andreas. We got so much going on for Tales from the Field. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm flustered with all that stuff that's going on. I'm a little flustered, but I go back to how Josh, did the intro. He is a smooth operator. Oh, other than that, I'm doing great.
A smooth operator, indeed. I like it. He's got the magic hat on. It's too bad for Josh that we're not keeping score because he just got 1,000,000 points from Neeraj. That's awfully.
To be fair, well, I was going to say, to be fair, we never really kept track of the points before, but it was all in fun. But yeah,
I was going to say
again. I always like to use the analogy. It was like, whose line is it anyway? The game where the points don't matter.
Don't matter. So. Yeah. We make up the rules as we go along. Speaking of the rules, let's talk about something that rules, and that is great content from our Azure data community. And speaking of that great content, we've got up first someone who truly rules, Mr. Mirage Jafari, using data pipelines for copying data from KQL databases and crafting workflows with a lookup activity.
Yep. So a nicely written down blog by Guy. Data Factory. Writing queries or bringing KQL databases, sometimes the queries are hard to write it up. But during the show, Brad did mention it how to write SQL queries on KQL. So that was a nice way to do it. But here, Guy is showing you up how to copy the data using Data Factory, moving data from the to and from the KQL databases in there. Step by step is showing you how to do that, including copy activities, how the data can be moved from one end to other end. It sometimes gets hard because KQL, if you are not aware of it, real-time analytics sometimes might be hard to do it, but Data Factory is very easy, drag and drop copy activity. You just create the source, create the thing, and it does move the data from one end to another end. So nice written down block.
Wonderful. Nice stuff. I like it. Speaking of something I really liked, every now and then I like to go a little bit outside of my comfort zone. And that's what I did with this blog this week. Eduardo Perez, Preval, I think, Eduardo Preval did a wonderful blog on introduction to deploying data infrastructure to Azure using Terraform. Now, this is part 3 of his series. And as you can see up here in part 1, they covered the basics and the prerequisites for working with Terraform. In part 2, we've created our first Azure resource. And then he walks through how to deploy and configure an Azure SQL database in Terraform. I know this is something that we have all had customers that ran into that began doing some work out there. And I have had many customers over the years that are utilizing Terraform. And I thought this is a really good, nice tutorial stepping through how to use Terraform in a very detailed way to be able to deploy your Azure SQL database. A lot of fun, really cool. And again, something a little bit different outside of the norm for me, which I enjoy because it pushes me to learn something, which is really fun. Speaking of someone who is just so much fun. I love hanging out with this person whenever I can. And up next, we have Mr. Daniel Terrell. Query your data in Azure SQL using natural language and ChatGPT.
I really like hanging out with you two there, balls. It's always a good time, and we always get into a lot of trouble. You too, Josh, but you're always so busy being a manager. So this was, speaking of stepping outside of the box, great segue there also for this is I haven't been big into the chat GPT and the natural query language, and I need to, right? It's here. It's not going anywhere. It's only going to evolve. And what happens here? What Adam does here is he first gives us the why, what he's trying to do here, the why I am doing this, sharing, and then goes into getting started, actually has a GitHub repository with all the code we need here to be able to do this, then goes into what natural query language is. So if we don't know what it is or how to use it, goes into an explanation of that. Also, warning, right? I love that Adam gives the warning here. Don't do this in production, right? This is not ready for prime time. Do this in your development environments, but start checking it out. Then how well does it? Yeah, there's the warning right there. I love that he put that in there because some folks would assume it's okay. But look, there's things going across the internet you may or may not want people to see, right? So we need to make sure these are secure. How well it does work. And then after he goes through that, I love the 6 steps of how does it work. So not only is he giving us an example to work on, but then 6 steps that take place of how this natural query language with the large language model is working for us. And then he wraps it up with a brief final thoughts. And I really enjoyed this. And honestly, I think this is something that I'm going to play with. And once I'm done with my Azure Data Studio migration, I think this is going to be one of my videos because this looks really fun, right? Natural query language. How many sales did I make? I don't have to write T-SQL. It'll write it for us. So I want to see how well it works myself. So yeah, great article.
I was going to say that's very exciting. I always love it when we get to fold something old and something new together to be able to get that new combination of technology and the way that it's continuing to advance. And speaking about something that I am just so excited about, I am excited every time I get to hear from this person because they have a perspective that's very different than my own. And they always bring something from the table that I can learn from. And you might be wondering who I'm talking about. Well, I'm not going to keep you waiting. It's Mr. Andreas Padilla. And up next, we've got supercharged Azure ML code deployment with new VS Code integration.
So, first things first, this article, written by Sid Unithan. Thank you so much for this article. I know it was written back in 2021. I wanted to reserve this, put this back on the top of your inboxes. Why? Because VS Code integration with ML Studio is such a great, feature that we have out there. The ability to code locally, tie into GitHub repos, use the local debugger, use VS Code terminal, use different extensions. Coding locally is a big ask for customers. This is a great summary of what you get out of the box with that VS Code integration with ML Studio and being able to say, you know what, I'm going to tap into one of those clusters that is in my machine learning studio and then code locally and then push all the code to that cluster or that compute instance and do everything within the niceness and beauty of your own laptop or machine. But I have a method to my madness here. I'm pushing this out there because my last article that I want you to know about is a little about some of the tips for working with VS Code. We're going to get to those shortly. Check this one out. It'll give you what's out of the box. There's a couple of things that we'll talk about in my next article, which has to do with VNet integration. But this is your starting point.
That was smooth, Andreas. That was very, very smooth. And speaking of someone who I think is just so smooth, even when they don't expect it, it's your friend and mine, Mr. Joshludeman. And Josh has building your own DB Copilot for Azure SQL with Azure OpenAI ChatGPT-4. Josh, take it away.
Yeah, so I actually stole a little inspiration from the bulldog himself, Mr. Dan Taylor. So I was actually later to getting my links in than Dan was. But so when I saw this originally, I was like, I'm going to put it in. But I saw Dan's in there with the link he just was talking about. And I said, you know what? I'm still going with this because I'm all about differing, perspectives. I mean, there's more than one way to design or architect a solution. And this one here is done by Valentina Alto. And what Valentina does is she walks through every little piece of it of using basically ChatGPT, or really you could substitute in, other LLMs as need be, but actually building in, what you're going to do and building your own DB Copilot for Azure SQL. She uses And using Azure OpenAI GPT-4, she uses, a whole tutorial. She has a video there, whole tutorial. She links to how to deploy a SQL DB, all the code to run inside SQL, the Python code to run as well, and even utilizes the Titanic data set from Kaggle. So it's a really easy to get going solution. Try and get your feet wet in it, so to speak. So I even though I saw Dan's, I was like, you know what, this is just another perspective, another way to do it. Definitely going to put it out there.
Well, and I'm going to give a shout out to Valentina, right? Because this isn't the first time we've had her on the program. I a long time ago, I want to say 4 or 5 months ago, she had a great blog. I took that blog and I played around with it. I made a video out of it. And so Valentina is just constantly coming out with great content. So make sure that you go click on this blog. You can follow her over on DevBlogs. You can follow her over on LinkedIn. You want to make sure and do that because she constantly produces really great content, but inspiring content with a lot of detail that makes you want to be able to go in there and play around with it and make it your own. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
And I was also going to say, you mentioned the blogging and stuff like that. She also has a GitHub repo under her name, Valentina-Alto, on GitHub, where she's got about 7 different repositories out there, different things she's doing, recommendation systems with LLMs, some dabbling she's doing with OpenAI, COVID stuff. So all kinds of neat things that she's doing over there in the data analytics and data science space. So definitely one to check out.
Well, I was going to say that was absolutely wonderful. And speaking of absolutely wonderful, up next, I have the wonderful Neeraj Jhaveri with welcoming the generative AI era with Microsoft Azure.
So as everybody's stepping out, this time I did not bring a Fabric blog, just wanted to see if I can do a generative AI. So generative AI is the buzzword right now. And I was just talking to my manager about AI, and this came up. A nice little blog where generative AI is definitely it's impacting a lot of things, and it's going to be a part of the economy coming up. What definitely generative AI can do is it can generate new product ideas, design, personalize marketing campaigns, and all of them. So this is what is going to be in there. The way Ben has written down is how generative AI is shaking up the industries, which is a good read. I mean, how industries are adopting the whole generative AI. And then one of the couple of success stories, and one I like the one was CarMax, right? In CarMax, they did a survey of 5,000 cars. If they had to manually do it, the whole thing, it's going to take them 11 years to do that. I mean, that would be insane to take 11 years to just do that. While doing through generative AI, they were done in a couple of hours. So definitely something how generative AI is going to help CarMax to go beyond it. But other examples are also definitely good, but definitely a good article to read about generative AI and how it's impacting industries and individuals working on it.
Wow, that is amazing. That is amazing. And I'll be honest, I found these next folks amazing. So first off, this is an article that you got to attribute to multiple people. So it is published by Mirage Jafari. However, if you look at this, Cheryl Zhao, Mark Hamilton, and Nelly Gustafson all worked on this together. And this is harnessing the power of LangChain in Microsoft Fabric for advanced documentation summarization. Now, you may recall that we did a video probably I'd say about a month and a half ago, where we showed that you can utilize and you can execute pip as well as LangChain within Microsoft Fabric to be able to use LLMs. What I love is they break this down to be able to give you the flow. First off, the flow of the document, the input, what we're doing, how we're browsing the content of the document, getting information from it, prompt from the agent, and then output of the associated information. This is really, really key because there are going to be a lot of different industries when you look at a use case for AI that are looking at how do we read documents and process this. It goes through importing the proper libraries and then also providing the keys for OpenAI authentication. This is something that we cover in those videos, but also everybody who's going to do this, and you're going to see this in multiple blogs, because what this is calling that API key, that service that we have for OpenAI in Azure to be able to utilize it in Microsoft Fabric. The fact that we can use these two things together, incredibly, incredibly powerful. How we initialize them using the language transformers, pulling back the data, looking at the literature, and then pushing this out. As a matter of fact, I'm looking forward to having some fun with this and playing around with this. This was a great read. This is really, really interesting. But if you're looking at that use case of how could we take this data and how could we summarize these documents, I find it fascinating. The next thing I want to know is grabbing these results, right? This is data enrichment. We want to store this. We want to be able to pull this together. We want to be able to link this to our database. So I can see a lot of wonderful use cases here, especially when you look at analytics for being able to put granular level data into different data warehousing rows to be able to look at this that provides that executive summary of that data within those documents. So really fun, really cool. And I mean, whenever I think of fun and cool, I couldn't help but think of this next leak and the person who was provided, because this is not the first time we've had this person on this show, but I love every time we get their links up here. And it's again by Dan Taylor. This is by Steph Bruno, one half of the Data Witches. Absolutely love their blog. You guys want to make sure that you're going over there and you check out the Data Witch blog. But Dan, this is Power BI licensing calculator. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, so this was really cool. So real quick, I put a tweet out yesterday. I said, if you have any links that you want to share, and it wasn't by Stephanie or one of the Data Witches, but somebody shared with me in DM to share this link. So keep them coming, folks, because there's another one coming as well that was shared to me in DM. So it's really helpful when you have these links that you want to get promoted. Really short and sweet blog post here. Basically, they're talking about their Power BI licensing calculator that they have put together, and it can help you determine, do you need PPU? Would Fabric be a better fit for you? So it's a really cool tool. You plug in your number of users, your developers, the customers. Do you need Power BI Premium? And then what's your largest data set? Goes out and figures this all out for you. And it says this, from a cost perspective, would be best for your environment. Down there, they provide some links to additional licensing information. And then there's a link down further by Mark Levals about, do I need Power BI Premium? So really good blog post on how to leverage and find out what you need within your environment. Great little, I love it. I love calculators. So
I was going to say that's a really nice resource that they put together, and I can see exactly how that's going to be very, very helpful for the end user. And speaking of someone who's always very helpful for the end users with their knowledge and their insight, I'm going over to Mr. Andreas Padilla, and you have data drift monitoring in Azure ML in 9 minutes.
9 minutes. You know, if I'm waiting for the 6-minute abs, but I'll stick with this 9-minute, Azure ML before I get to the 6-minute abs. Great video by Amberesh Ganguly. What he does is he shows us what is data drift, how to, conceptualize it, understand it. Data drift and measuring it with complex data sets can get pretty hardy for you. It can get you into a pretzel. But what he does in the video, he creates a baseline data set and a target data set, and he simulates how the data starts to drift and how your model precision starts to vary when the data starts to obviously change. And then on top of that, he tells you some of the best practices. Remember, for model monitoring, best practices are monitor your data. Get that right off the bat. That's, should be muscle memory, should be your knee-jerk reaction. Monitor your model precision, monitor your model data, set up alerts for those to make sure that if the data drifts, you recreate or restart a retraining process so the model gets retrained with new data. Best practice 101. Hopefully this does better than, your ab workout and gets you there quicker in 9 minutes.
Well, I do love my ab blasters, but speaking of something else that I equally love, I love it when someone makes my life easier, especially when they bring knowledge to the table that I just wasn't expecting. And that knowledge comes from Mr. Joshludeman with Will Needham. And remember, we showed you Will. Will had his wonderful content over on the Fabric channel that we have on LinkedIn. And it is let's see, say goodbye to error messages, right?
Yeah. So the real key to this one, and something I felt like, so yeah, this is definitely a fabric focused video, and that's really what Will focuses on his channel on. However, the tooling that he's talking about with Great Expectations is a tool for validating, documenting, and profiling your data, right? And this goes back to a conversation that I've had with a former colleague of ours at Dan and Brad, specifically with you, when we were at Pragmatic Works. If you remember, when we were there, there was work at one point going on a data validation product as part of release pipelines. This actually does that. It fills that gap, and it fills it well from a Python perspective. So more so, I really wanted to, yes, bring the great work of Will, and Will, we all know, does great videos and things like that. But I wanted to use this opportunity to elevate Great Expectations, because as someone who, I'm not as knowledgeable as I want to be, but definitely passionate about figuring out a way to bridge the gap between our friends that are developers who really use DevOps beautifully and optimally, DevOps tooling to roll out, updates and things. There's definitely a gap between, them and us, and how we can automate in the data space and really roll that stuff out. This really fills the gap as far as automation and automated deployment by giving us a great tool for automated testing, and really understanding our data and validating it as part of a release pipeline. So I that was my big hope with this. Will's great. Thank you, Will. But also tip of the cap to Great Expectations as well.
I was going to say, I also really just enjoy Will's voice. Will has a very lyrical voice. He's got a great voice. He's fun to listen to.
Definitely
you want to
better
make
than
sure. I was going to say, I don't think anybody can compare. Maybe Neeraj. But
last week, last week he was nuggets. This week he's abs. So he's moving up in the world.
And maybe each ab is a nugget. I don't know. I would take it. I have ab. I haven't. I'm pretty sure that my abs have been missing for so long they're on a milk carton somewhere.
Well, I was actually saying, when we were talking about 6-minute abs, I'm like, if there is such a thing as 6-minute abs, my abs are 15 minutes in the past.
Well, speaking of someone who's not from the past, but might as well be from the future, because they have such a beautiful vision of things to come. I'm talking about the one, the only, Mr. Neeraj Jhaveri, with 7 ways generative AI is bringing bionic business to manufacturing.
So, Andreas, this is a good article for you to read about it, because this is related to IoTs. This was by Microsoft doing a POCs with this company using generative AI, and Streckback SE, that's where it's a construction company. They went along with it, and then the end is showing you how they impacted up. The 3, 6, 7 impacts were collect and leverage data, product customization, process optimization, rapid prototyping, quality control, supply and maintenance, predictive analysis. But these were all the IoT devices that were brought together, and how generative AI can help in on top of it. OpenAI, Microsoft is leading that space right now, and definitely something to read about it on this article is maybe, Andreas, that is something that, because you're leading the IoT part of it, this would be a good article to read about it.
Very nice, very nice. And I got to say, we talked about this guy last week, and he had another great blog, so I just couldn't help but go to him again. The greatest name on Twitter is still Pawar BI, Sandeep Pawar, and this time it was creating a shortcut to KQL tables in a Fabric Lakehouse. Now, this is kind of a workaround, but I found this to be absolutely fascinating. He was talking about how shortcuts are one of the best things that we have, but he walks through how you can make a shortcut to a table. And the solution is, if you have a KQL database that is writing directly to OneLake, you can go into your OneLake folder and you can write to the reference that you have in the API to be able to link that as a shortcut table. And then you've got your KQL database that you can actually, because T-SQL now works against KQL, that you can use the T-SQL endpoint to be able to run against. I can't help but think this would be a fun little thing for me to take that IISDB, see if I can get this working. But I just thought that's a really neat and inventive way to be able to get some functionality that isn't there yet. Probably we'll see that one day, but just what a great workaround to be able to get it. It's a quick read, but very concise, really, really cool. And again, Sandeep Pawar, I'm not best Twitter handle in the market as far as I'm concerned. Speaking of, just some of the absolute best though. Well, I got to talk about this guy coming up next and this amazing link. I think we all know the answer to this question, but Dan, you're bringing us, should you migrate to Fabric?
And it's all, what do you need, right? What do you need to bring? What do you need at the table? And Haroon Legos here, and Haroon, if I'm saying your name wrong, hit me up in Twitter, because once again, this was a response to us, a call out to speakers, and Haroon's been on here before. But I love, this is a truthful and honest article about should you migrate to Fabric. And my tongue still hasn't caught up yet with me. And Haroon goes through 4 Fabric strengths, right? He goes through unleash the power of raw data, starting the streaming of real time, which he spoke a little bit earlier today on on our What's New in Fabric session, and with Bradley Schott, you spoke about the KQL database and KQL cluster, and the Kusto cluster. Man, there you go, 3rd time's a charm.
You're good, buddy. You're good. Keep going. Don't trip yourself up. You got this.
Managed. And then he goes through 4 Fabric weaknesses. So 4 and 4, or 4 and 3. Sorry, and I like bullet point 3, move data warehouses and lakehouses, or I'm sorry, down on the
so 3 is move data warehouse.
Sorry.
And
down on the weaknesses. I apologize. I just got an alert about the weather, and I apologize. It caught me off guard. Migration is a challenge, and I love that he called this out here. But I challenge him on this bullet point, right? Because we're making it easier and easier every day to migrate from your existing platforms into Fabric. So I believe that bullet point 3 is going to change as we come closer and closer to GA, to be very honest, right? And then he sums it up really great with the conclusion. And my favorite part of the conclusion is this. And I'm going to quote him. However, suppose you were you know what? Read the article. I want you to read this article. It's a great conclusion. And another great article by Hugo.
It is. I was going to say it is a wonderful article, and it's very interesting because look, you got to have the point of view where you go, here's what is a challenge. And there is no doubt right now we've only got one pathway avenue. That's going to change. We're going to see things open up, but you're going to have to use a data flow Gen 2, which doesn't allow you to be able to migrate from your data flow Gen 1. So he's got some points in there, but it's important that we find those things, we acknowledge them. But as we get workarounds, you don't have to worry. We're going to have a video on those workarounds the second we get those stuff released, and we will celebrate that. Speaking of something we're going to celebrate, it's going to be the presentation by this next person who is very celebrated, and their link, and it is Mr. Andres Padilla with 8 tips for Azure ML and VS Code. Now, bringing it full circle back around, right, Andreas? Because we started off looking at that first blog.
Exactly.
Here we are on your 3rd one.
Thanks a lot for that. That's a good setup. You're gonna, this is a softball home run the way you pitched that for me. Great article by Timo Klimmer. He goes into some great tips for VS Code. The ones I want you to concentrate on is that you can do some great debugging of your scoring file for Azure machine learning scenarios, but you can also tap into the output logs so you can look at the performance for that scoring tip. That's tip number 2. And the one that I really want to concentrate on is tip number 3. You can, when you connect VS Code to your compute instances in Azure Machine Learning Studio, it's going to do it through either one of 2 ways, through WebSockets or SSH. SSH is usually locked down, and I've been seeing this from other customers lately, is that they're developing locally. And then we have to go back and look and see why it may be that their VS Code can no longer talk to their ML clusters or instances. Usually is because they took away SSH connection. They actually probably have to create a rule to allow those VS Code to talk to those ML instances. What I want you to remember here, if you start tightening down the hatches and all the portholes for your ML Studio and all the clusters in a nice VNet or a managed VNet environment, remember, if you're developing locally with VS Code, just remember that WebSockets and SSH are the two options to get VS Code to talk to the clusters. Just keep that in mind. If for any reason VS Code stops working and you can't talk to the cluster anymore, maybe because of this.
Very nice. I love it. And speaking of things that I absolutely love, I love the technical prowess. I mean, he almost always gives up on me. But last but not least, it's the man who never gives up. It's Mr. Joshludeman. And Josh, you have another data engineering end-to-end project. And just go ahead and give it away to us.
Yeah. So this is actually just a good end-to-end video. It's a little on the long side, about 47 minutes. So definitely recommend watching it, at higher speed. But he actually walks through just a standard, pretty straightforward data architecture. We're using Data Factory for data integration. He's got multiple zones in his data lake, using Databricks for transformation, and even Synapse Analytics at the analytics layer, and then how to connect whatever visualization solution. For me, again, any different perspective on walking someone through a basic architecture and different tools, not only is it good to understand the how, but it's also good to hear someone else's why, because there's always, gaps in there for me, things I learn in the why that even, just basic videos like this. Also in this channel, the Nintia Cloud Tech, there's they've got stuff on Azure Data Factory, Databricks, Python, Power BI, Power BI integration, all kinds of good content in here. But again, just a great video to walk through a good, straightforward end-to-end architecture and implementing it. So definitely good stuff there.
Very nice. Well, we are down to the wrap up. Thank you all so much for joining us for the links that we have covered. Thank you for everyone who sent something in. And if you want to be on the weekly Azure Data Community Roundup, just let us know. You can hit us up on LinkedIn, on Twitter, also on the YouTube channel. We would love to feature you. The links for every single one of these videos is already in the description of this video today. So please go check out those wonderful authors who have taken the time to be able to contribute to the community. And hopefully this helps you solve some technical issue that you've got. Right now, let's go and let's talk about the wrap up a little bit. So we've got a couple places we're going to be. We are rapidly approaching September, and in September, we are entering conference season. And the first conference that we're going to be at is Future Data Driven 2023. You want to make sure and check this out. We've all got sessions. I've got a session. Josh is presenting with me. Dan has a session. Andreas has a session. Neeraj has a session. We've all got sessions that we will be presenting on, plus a host of many other talented and Microsoft presenters who will be there for Data Driven 2023. So you want to make sure and check that out. We've already alluded to this. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
1,100 people I think I saw have already signed up for the event.
Oh, wow.
1,100. This is going to be big. So you don't want to miss a thing. This is going to be a big conference, and you want to make sure that you're a part of it. Speaking of something else, if you are in person, if you are in the Orlando area in October, you want to head over to SQLSaturday.com. Join us at SQL Saturday Orlando. We have a pre-con coming. Myself, Joshludeman, Dan Taylor, Buck Woody are going to be there. Buck, of course, from Microsoft, and he's currently working on the SQL product group. But we are developing this Fabric pre-con, a full day for the data professional to help you understand how you can utilize Fabric and make sure you've got an overview so you can walk out and be ready to go. We are all hard at work in that. There's going to be a public GitHub repo. So we will be bringing more to you in these next couple months. So if you can't make it there, well, where else do you want to make it? You want to make it to one of the most amazing places on earth. Josh, give it to me quickly. Where are we going to be?
We're going to be on the beautiful grounds of Universal Studios Orlando at the beautiful, luscious, welcoming Lowe's Royal Pacific Resort and Conference Center at Live 360.
That's right. Live 360 is coming up. It is that time of year, the week before Thanksgiving. There's no other place you want to be. You want to be in Orlando, Florida, where you can be at a resort that is decorated for Christmas. Bring your family. There's a beautiful family luau where they'll have dancing. They're going to have cakes and desserts. They have all kinds of family activities. Your room key is a 2-part fast pass at Universal Studios. So enjoy the conference and then go spend some quality time with your family, enjoying the sights and the sounds of this beautiful area. Not to mention, we're going to be there again with Buck Woody. It's myself, Dan Taylor, Neeraj Jhaveri. We also have multiple presentations that we will be doing at the conference. It's an exciting time, and we are very, very excited to be doing this with us. Josh.
And for how much we get everybody excited about Live 360, and we keep saying it's time and stuff like that, I feel the need to social media stalk Bruce Buffer just so he can show up at the opening of the conference on Sunday morning and yell, "It's time!"
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind is very soon we're going to be getting discount codes for our speakers. And so I'll have one, Neeraj is going to have one, Josh is going to have one. But one of the things we'll do is we'll make sure and flash those up there. Use any one you want, but you can get a discount by using that. There's also early bird pricing in effect. But we will be there. We're going to be at the networking event. So you want to come up with us, talk with us, bring your questions, because your time is valuable. We appreciate the time you are spending with us, which brings us to the end of the day. Thank you so much for all the time you spent with us.
One thing, Josh, Brad, I just got a ping from one of the person asking, is the recording for today was recorded? Yes, it was recorded. It's in this YouTube channel. Go up and visit up. And we are going to have it one more again in September.
We're going to have a September, we're going to have an October, we're going to have a November. This is going to be a monthly series that we do as we go through the back half of this year. We'll have to see if we do one in January or not. But yeah, this was a great one. It is up there. It is recorded. It is in the channel. Make sure you check it out. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Take care of everyone. Be good to one another. See you later. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.